Hi, this is Finicky, and today we're going to be looking at putting the point motors together. I've got a PL-10E, which is the point motor that goes underneath the layout. Mounted on top of that is going to be the PL-15, which is the Microswitch, and I've also gone and bought myself some PL-34 looms because it just makes life quite a fair bit easier with those, and the looms just attach onto the motor and then just wire up to my PL-50, which is where the switches are. We'll have a look at that on the layout in a little while. I've already used one of the PL-34 looms, so you get two in a pack, so I've used one already and I've got one in the bag there ready to go. Okay, let's just open these up. We're not going to need the boxes, so put that to one side. That's your motor, just a motor with the arm. The arm comes up into the point to turn it, and you get a pretty comprehensive list of instructions to talk you through how to actually put these together. Don't need that for the moment. And then if we open up the Microswitch, be careful, there are some small parts in there. Again, stapled this time. Let's take the staple out. There we go. More instructions showing exactly how the switch goes together, all your assembly instructions, how to mount it, how to wire it, and also if you've got a reverse loop, how to wire that up as well. So that's all pretty good. In the box you've got your mounting plate. You've then got your two switches which are sided, so you need to be careful and make sure you get them mounted around the right way. There's the little bushing which needs to go onto the point motor itself, and then when you open the bag, make sure you do this over a table, because there are some very small parts in here. Now I don't know if you can see these all on the camera, but we've got a couple of screws for mounting it underneath the baseboard. We've got some little washers. I'll just move these over here. We've got 4 nuts and we've got 4 screws. Now the only tool that you're going to need for putting these point motors together is a small screwdriver. That's pretty much all you need. So the first thing that we are going to do is to mount the bush onto the point motor, and that's got to come right the way down into these parts here. Now I'm building this in N gauge, and so as I'm going to mount this underneath the board, this plate is going to mount on the top like that. And you can see that these middle prongs are getting in the way. So the first thing we're going to do, actually there is another tool that we need, and that's your long nose pliers, and all I do is I just straighten that and then bend that over thus, so that it's nice and clear, and we can get the bracket on. So we'll bend this one over as well. Flip it back the other way so it's out of the way, and then when we come to actually fit the motor to our mounting bracket, then you can see that that actually fits on there quite nicely. Now let me just come into the camera so you can see what's going on. Okay, try and get this in. Come on, get in focus. Okay. So you can see there that I've bent these down so that the mounting plate can completely fit onto the point motor, and then when we're done, what we'll actually do is we will bend these little lugs over. Let me get this in focus again, sorry about this guys. Okay, so bend those 2 little lugs, you can see them just sticking out at the bottom there, or 4 little lugs, 2 each side, which just basically holds the plate on in place. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slide the bushing all the way down here so that it fits in this area here. And what I normally do is have it level with the top of the bracket. So let's go and do that now. just a case of pushing it on. I don't know if there's a right or a wrong way to do this, but oops, just locate the hole. And what I normally do is just literally just twist it on. You don't actually need the bracket on to do this, and just twist it down. It's very stiff. It does say that you should glue this, but I actually find it stiff enough, so I'm not gluing mine. Whether that will be a mistake in the fullness of time and I need to glue them, I don't know, but for the moment it's pretty stiff. Just keep turning, winding it down. It's going to take me a moment or two, so I'll be back in a minute. Okay, let's just pop the bracket back on. There we go. All I want to do is just make sure that it's just down from the mounting plate. There's no real guidance in the instructions on how far down it should be, but you know, that's where I like to locate it. Okay, then we need to look at the microswitches. Now the microswitches, just put these on a white piece of paper so you can see a little bit better. They are handed. I'm just going to pick up the camera. I'll just come in good and close here. Then you can see that there's like a little half circle piece of metal that needs to be facing outwards, so the bush, you actually have the straight arms attaching to the bush and working on the bush. Once again, I apologise, we're working with some very small parts here, so it is difficult with the camera, so I'm going to try and just talk through what I'm doing as much as possible. Okay, take one of the screws, one of the washers, and then that goes down through the top of the microswitch, and remember the straight edge needs to be against the bush, and we'll just locate the screw into the hole there. Take one of the like I said, these things are very, very, very small. Got it. Okay, so we'll try that again. Locate that in the bracket. Sometimes it is easier to take it off the of the motor. That's got it. Like I said, quite fiddly. These are quite small. You wait till you try setting these up, because for engage you've got a very small throw on the points, which means that you need to get this even more accurate than I think that you do on 00. At least that's what the guys at Peco told me. So we start with the second one. Washer through the screw, down through the switch, making sure that you've got the switch around the right way. Locate that in the hole, flip it over, grab one of the nuts, line it up, come on. I think you need fingers of a 5-year-old to do this. I'm sure it'd be easier. Instead of great big old clumpy fingers like I've got. Okay, that's 3 down, 1 to go. Now just doing these finger tight at the moment, not too tight at all. Okay. Right, once we've done that, what I then tend to do is just tighten these down a little bit, just holding the nut on the back, and then just take half a turn or turn off, just so that you've got enough to adjust. Now adjusting these is going to be a bit of a guess, and you're just going to need to keep moving them around as best that you can. When you've done a few, you will start to get a feel for where it needs to be. Now for my points, I tend to find that if I can see just a little bit of daylight between the top of the Microswitch and the base, then I'm normally not too far off. So it's just a case of moving these around. Sometimes you need to slacken it off a little bit more. Like I said, I apologise that you can't really see what's going on. This is so small. But once you've got it in roughly the right place, tighten that up. I think that's pretty much there. The amount that you can see of daylight through the mounting hole in the base and the actual switch itself, probably the best way of describing it is it just looks like a very small smile. And this could take a little bit of time, but the more time you spend here, the easier it will be when you actually come to mount these on the baseboard. Okay, this one doesn't want to move, so what I'm going to do, it looks like the nut is actually twisted in the mounting underneath, so unscrew it right off, get that in roughly the right place, screw that back up. Okay, the nut's tight, catching. Okay, then we mount it back onto the mount, just being careful of the switches on the bushing. Just wriggle that around. Sometimes these go on really easy, other times you do have to play around a little bit to get them on. You need to make sure that you're not pushing against the Microswitch as well when you're putting this on. Okay. Right, looks like I probably need to bend that down just a little bit more. Not overly happy with that. Let's just take that down just a bit more. It's just fouling at one of these two. I got a little bit of a rock going on with the mounting plate when it's on the motor. So we'll just bend those down a little bit more. Okay, slide that over. Be careful with the switches. It can be a little bit fiddly. You just need to take your time. Do with about 3 different pairs of hands on this job sometimes. Okay, locate that in. Right, that doesn't rock anymore. It's nice and solid, so I'm a lot happier with that. And what you're actually looking for, it looks like I've got this one bang on this time. I don't know whether this is right, it doesn't say in the instructions, but what I found works for me is the switches basically keep this in the middle of this gap here, so you've got an even throw that way and that way, and you tend to find that the switches are actually pushing it back into the middle. And if I be quiet for a moment, you should be able to hear a click, and that's the Microswitches just switching over between the two. On your point, it's going to be a complete throw one way or complete throw the other way. But for setting it up underneath the box, I tend to find if we've got this central, underneath the board, if you've got this central, then it makes it a lot easier for actually setting up. Okay, once you've got that pretty much how you want it, then you can just bend over these little metal parts, which will then hold the black mounting plate in place. Again, quite fiddly, so you know, nice pair of long nose pliers works very well for this job. Again, just take it slow, take it easy, take your time. One of the things I've learnt in modelling is you can't rush anything. If you do, things start going horribly wrong. Bend that one a bit, bend that one a bit. Push that one over there. That's got it, that's nice. I tend to find as well these long nose pliers with a bend in, they tend to be a godsend when you're modelling, especially when you've got to go around corners like this. Okay, God help us if you've got to take that off again, but then you can see that those are just folded over and that's all really nice and solid now. So we've got our switches, and that we'll be wiring up to these 6, and all the time I just check to make sure that that's okay. Not quite happy with that for the moment, so what we'll do is we'll just adjust one of these. That's so much better. And then when we're happy, we just tighten those all down. I should probably have tightened those down before I started messing around bending those. I've probably moved it with my finger. But it just shows how easy it is to move these switches and how finicky they are. That's where I got the name of the layout. It's quite a finicky job, but now you can see one way. I'm reasonably happy with that one. We'll see how that goes when we put it on the layout. Then the wiring loom is nice and easy. Got 3 parts. There we go. And on the back of the packet you've got the wiring loom showing you how it gets wired. So we've got a red from one side to your switch, the black on the other side of the switch to your switch. So what we'll do is we'll pop those on, and I tend to try and make sure that I'm getting all of these the same for all of my motors. So what we'll do is we'll slide that one on there. We'll slide that one on there. I love this because there's no soldering. Soldering is the one thing I absolutely hate. And then on the other side we've got 2 spade connections with this little loop. So we'll just do the same again. We'll slide one on there. Sometimes you just got to raise these a little bit and make sure you've got a good fit. Okay, let's just swap those around. The only reason I've swapped that around is because if you can see there the wire is that side, and it just makes it a little bit neater in my view. Slide that one on there, and our motor then is good to fit underneath the baseboard. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so I'll leave you for the moment and we will go and have a look at mounting it under the baseboard. Okay, those of you that are vigilant will realise that the carpet tape has gone. It didn't really work. I've got this in a garage, and within a few days, well, about a week, it basically started lifting. So I've used the adhesive sealer that I used for the cork, and I've stuck the glue, the track down with that. That seems to be holding. The carpet tape was working okay for like the points here where they were straight, but with the curves, particularly the tighter curves, they were causing some problems and lifting, so I've had to rethink things there. But anyway, back to the point. Right, this video really is turning into one where I'm upstairs, downstairs, on top of the board, under the board, so I obviously apologise if the speech, volume and type is changing, but it's from one place to the other. So we've got our point motor set up. We've got the point motor on the bottom, we've got the switches on the top. We've aligned them as best as we can off the board. So now what we're going to do is put them underneath the board and try and locate this in the right place. Now, one of the things that I've done, I've already done a couple, and these are very much not for the faint-hearted. This is definitely a job for adults, not a job for children. And what I'm going to do is, just off camera here, I'm cutting a little bit of my horrible sticky carpet tape. Although we're not using that for the tracks anymore, I found another use for it. And I'm just going to stick a couple of bits onto the motor. I apologise I'm doing this off camera, but there's not an awful lot of room to work here at the moment, and I've got the camera obviously set up for the point at the moment, but I'll show you what I do. So what I've done is I've literally just stuck some tape on the top of the mounting brackets that go underneath the board. So as I get this in the right place, I'm just going to push this on, and that's going to hold it in the right place while I use the bradawl and then do a check underneath. And the way that I do this is one hand under the board. Now if you've got a large board, you're definitely going to need two people. Push the point over and then locate the pin. I don't know if you can see that coming up through the baseboard there, but locate the pin in the little hole in the point, and then it's a case of just moving the switch around until you've got it in the right place. And you do need two people, you need somebody underneath to obviously mark the board. But what I do is, because this is centralized on the switches, the micro switches, if I bring the point motor into the middle, let the point motor find its natural position, hold it in place, and then you can start to move the point backwards and forwards. Now if you can hear that click is very much different to a normal point click. There's very little noise there at all. With this, what you're hearing underneath is the point motor click. So that's in the right place. If I move the point motor over ever so slightly, I'll probably moved about 0.5 millimeter. You can see here that this is being pushed over and I've actually got to force it over, or you find that you haven't got the click. So again, just bring the point into the middle position, let the point motor find its own place underneath, and then it's just a fine adjustment to get that click. Somebody underneath the baseboard now marks the holes where the point motor needs to be, or if you're on your own you might need to get a pencil under there, but you tend to find it's very easy to move it. So that's how I locate where the point motors need to be. Then we go underneath the board and actually permanently fix it and wire it up, which we're going to do now. So to check it, I'm finding that when you're modelling, sometimes you've got to improvise and invent bits and pieces. So what I've got here is a 9-volt battery with a connector to the positive and a connector that I can put onto my micro switches underneath, and two 9-volt LEDs, again with two connectors each that can go underneath on the micro switch, and basically when you make the connection it lights the light. So what we can do is we can now go underneath the board, we can connect this up to our switch and see if the micro switches are working correctly on our switch. So let's go and do that now. Well, I'm going to need to hold the camera this time because there's just no room under here at the moment. But you'll see here that I've got the, sorry for the shake, I've got the battery just mounted on this shelf here where my analog controller is located, and I've connected up the three switches here. So if you can just see that, the yellow is gone to the middle, the green to one side, and the other green LED to the other side. And then we've got one LED there, and I think we've got another LED. Oh, too many green wires under here, but let's just switch this over and we'll see where it goes. So that light should go off, and then that one will go on. It's over just here. So I'll just come out a little bit so you can see that as we now switch the point over, we get one LED lights, switch it back, and the other LED lights. So that indicates to me that my micro switches are working. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take that one off and we'll pop it onto there. Forgive me, I'm going to put the camera down. I do not want to drop the camera. You can just about see that I've got the three micro switches here, which we were on a moment ago on this side. And I've moved the wires to the three micro switches on the switch this side. Let's just see if I can get a better angle for you. There we go. You can see those are on the switches. And then as we flick, come out a little bit, as we flick the switch over, again we see one goes out, the other one goes on. I've got these LEDs in a really bad place for the video, but you'll see there that as we flick this over, it goes from one LED to the other. So that's indicating to me that that switch is working adequately for the layout. And at that point we'll then tighten up the screws on the switches, and then we'll take the little test rig off and we'll wire it up properly. Okay, before we look at the wiring underneath the layout, I've come upstairs just to show you a piece of paper that I put together to make the wiring easier, or the process of wiring easier. You'll notice on the switch, just to remind you, we've got three micro switches on one side and three micro switch connections on the other side. And this diagram shows the three for the top and the three for the bottom. And this is how I actually wire the switches. So the middle connector is going to be wired directly to the frog. The first one is going to be wired to the positive on the DCC bus, and I'm actually going to wire from the point to the DCC bus, which gives the power to the track, and I'm also going to wire the switch. So I'm going to use one of my spade connectors, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. So the electricity flows through the micro switch to make the frog positive, or through this switch to make the frog negative. So we need to make sure that we get that wired up correctly. On the other side, we've got the switch that's going to manage our panel lights, and very easily we get a positive DC in, and then depending on which of the two switches we're connecting to, we're either going to light LED number 1 or LED number 2 to show which way the train will travel. I've also got a few notes down here. So the bulb, the negative wire from the bulb needs to go to the negative bus wire. The LEDs, number 1 is the upper track LED and number 2 is the lower track. That's on the point, so whether we're going upwards or downwards. And then some notes, the fact that what I'm doing is I'm just connecting two wires into a spade on those two locations. So I've actually had that piece of paper on the floor all the time that I've been wiring, and I've actually been referring to it. Annoyingly, I actually created it around the wrong way, so very often I have it around that way, because obviously my switches are pointing from the right to the left. But if I do any switches the other way, then I can just flick that round and just put it whichever way I want it. So let's go and have a look at the wiring. Okay, we're back downstairs. You can see I've got my analog controller here. That's going to be used to power the lights and the point motors on the layout. And then we've got this spaghetti mess, which is the wiring for the 3 point motors. Now I've actually got longer wires than I needed to, basically because you want to make sure that you've got enough in case you need to move it around, and I'm going to have a piece of wood under here which is going to tidy that up a little bit. I have started to use some cable ties, as you can see here. Haven't cut them yet, to try and make this a little bit easier. But with the 3 wires to the point motor, the Peco point motors, and 6 wires to the Microswitches, it is going to get a little bit busy. There's not a lot I can do. Now I was going to show you all of the wiring, but it's pretty difficult because it's really confined in here. And I apologise for the camera shake yet again. I'm trying to stay out the way of the lights so that you could see. But over here we've got a couple of the Express Models connectors. So the blue connectors just simply crimp onto the live bus wire. And then you've got the red spade connector, just pushes in, so no soldering. It's really nice, really quick as well. And then these wires, so you've got the red wire here and the black wire here, is going straight to the frog side on the switch. So it's coming over to here. So basically this green one is coming from the frog. We've got this red one is going to the positive on the bus, and then this black one is going to the negative on the bus. This blue wire here is connected into the LEDs, brown one to the other LED, and then the yellow wire here, that's going to the positive power supply to power the LEDs. So those wires, if I just zoom out again, those wires are basically coming through the baseboard here, and then they're going to connect up to the back of the panel, which I've really got to be a contortionist to get in to see. Back of the panel I've got some connectors there where each LED is wired into the connector block, and then I've got the brown and the blue wires which are connecting into the appropriate LED. So this is the panel. I've got my switches on the top, so if we were to throw the switches, you see that the points are now throwing, which is also switching the frog, and I've done my little test with my LEDs. And I've got the wires that should come up to the back here, and these switches, I think it's PL-15s if I remember rightly, we've got a blue and a yellow wire on each of those, and that is simply coming over the back here into a block connector just here, which goes into a red and a blue, which then feed round to the DC controller. So this is all DC driven. This one is fixed, these two aren't at the moment. These 3 switches are going to be for the sidings. These 3 switches are going to be for the points that are going to go up there for the station area. And then these 3 switches should be for the signals that we can have on the layout. So as we switch, at the moment you can see that the locomotive is going to run into the top siding. So if we flick the switch, we now see the locomotive is going to come down on that particular point and run across to the second one. And then if we flick these over, then you'll see that we've got the locomotive will now go down, down, down into the small bottom siding here. So I'm really quite pleased with the panel. It's come along quite nicely, and the CDU is good. It gives you a good throw, which is nice. That's what that clicking is. and all in all I'm relatively pleased. So took a little bit of time to wire those 3 points. Going to get a bit quicker. I've got 6 more to do down the bottom, and my next project will be to get some of the buildings laid out on the layout at the bottom here, the station buildings, get this track laid, get these points laid. That's going to take me a little bit of time, so you probably won't get a video from me for a couple of weeks while I do all of that work, but that's basically this video. So thanks very much for your time, and I'll see you next time when we might have some locomotives running, but more importantly we'll be starting to get back into the scenery, so the bit I like. Thanks so much for your time. Catch you later. Bye bye.